Hello and welcome back. Has been a bit of a break between the last one. I've just been away to Ireland again, to the Con Forest, which is absolutely incredible. It really is a magical forest, and I definitely felt a lot of healing and activations as I was there. And I knew that I'd been in this forest before and left codes for me to go back and pick up. So it was really activating. It was incredible, and you'll see on the front of this thumbnail a picture of one of the trees there. This tree, as I was walking down a path, it was really hidden, and I was just stopped and I looked, and the path just seemed to open up and I could see this tree in the distance. And as we got to this tree, and I saw it as this magical faraway tree, it reminded me of when I was younger and I used to read those books, The Magical Faraway Tree, and I used to imagine this tree deep in the forest, hidden, that not everyone could see. And from the path, you couldn't really see this tree. It was like it was being hidden and camouflaged by other trees. Now we got to the tree because I was with a friend, and what she was picking up, that the tree was the tree of potential. Now when I walked around the back of the tree, kind of the tree, the way its bark was, you can really see beings within the trees, because the trees are alive and they are sentient beings. And as I was going around the back, it was like this phoenix, this bird, the phoenix rising, which really is about potential, right? It's rising up from the ashes. It's being reborn again in the true soul self. So it's a very, very special tree. So if you ever get to go to Ireland, I'd really recommend going to the little village of Cong and spending some time in that magical forest. So let's call in. On that note, let's call in our guides, our angelic guides, our guardian angels, our ancestors, the dragons, all of the elementals, the fairy, the leprechauns, the fae, all of the nature spirits that are around us. Let's call them all in now for this reading, so that they can add their magic into it. Okay, so flying saucers, nothing extraordinary. Then I asked her to show me an example of her knowledge of technology. Do you want me to tell you how all the different machines of your world operate? The kind of thing our prominent scientists are only touching the fringes of. Why don't you make some great scientific discovery, let's say? That is why I've been doing for you the whole time you have been here. Not just for me, for the world of science, a discovery they will be prepared to recognise. Go ahead, make a discovery in some technical field which will prove your abilities, like spaceships, the atom, automobile fuel, since you say it's all so simple. In comparison with what I have been trying to show you, those fields you mentioned are something like, to use a term from your language, the Stone Age. That's perfect then. You may consider it primitive, but at least I'll be able to understand it. And we can know this again, right, when we are sold that lie about us being the most advanced civilization to ever exist on Earth. We've got all these megalithic structures around the world, the pyramids. We couldn't build them right now with the technology that we have. And the fact that that's really, being played down, and they've said that, people dragged those stones. I mean, that is a lie. We couldn't even build them now. I was watching some a while ago, and someone was saying, and it was saying that they tried to recreate the pyramids on the BBC to prove that we could create the pyramids now, and they went on to say we proved it by building it. But they built these pyramids apparently which were nothing like the pyramids, not in scale or anything. It was just really another illusion, another con which has been put there in our consciousness to lead us away from the truth, to make us believe that we are the most advanced civilization when we are not, but we are reawakening to this. So that's perfect then. You may consider it primitive, but at least I'll be able to understand it. You can prove you're right and show evidence of your intelligence, that your intelligence is superior to mine. Tell me, for example, what do you think of our aeroplanes and spaceships? Pretty close to perfect machines. No, they are altogether primitive. They only serve to show how primitive the technocrat path of development is. That remark put me on my guard, since I realised that Either her conclusions were those of a madwoman, or she really knew far more than someone with an ordinary consciousness could ever imagine. I continued my questioning. What do you mean when you say our rockets and planes are primitive? Anastasia responded after a brief pause, as though allowing time for her words to sink in. The functioning of all your machines, every single one of them, is based on the energy of explosion. Not knowing any more efficient natural sources of energy, you resort to such primitive, awkward substitutes with incredible stubbornness. And even the destructive consequences of their use do not stop you. The range of your aeroplanes and rockets is simply laughable. According to the scale of the universe, they rise a wee tiny bit above the earth, and now this method has practically reached its ceiling. Do you agree? But that is ridiculous. An exploding or burning substance propels some monstrous structures that we call a spaceship, and the greater part of this ship is designed precisely to solve this problem of propulsion. And what might be an alternative principle of movement through the atmosphere? A flying saucer might be a good example, Anastasia responded. What? You know about flying saucers and their propulsion systems? Of course I know. It's very simple and rational. I felt my throat go dry and tried to hurry her up. Tell me, Anastasia, quickly, and in a way I can understand. All right, only do not get excited. It will be harder to understand when you are excited. The propulsion principle of a flying saucer is based on the energy of generating a vacuum. How so? Be more precise. You have a limited vocabulary, yet I am compelled to restrict myself to it so that you can understand me. Well, I blurted out in agitation. I'll add Jali Tabla Air, and I began to quickly name all the words that just popped into my head for that moment, and even let out a few swear words. Anastasia broke in. You need not bother. I already know all the words you can express yourself with. And there are still others, and besides that, there is a whole different method of conveying information. If I use that, I could explain everything to you in a minute, right? Because we can convey information through energy transference as well. And again, we're going to be opening up to more of that as humans as we reconnect back to our true selves and this true divine technology that's been laying dormant, switched off, programmed in a way that leads us away from all of our true abilities. You need not bother. I already know the word. Oh, sorry, I read that again. Okay, so if I used that, I could explain everything to you in a minute. As things stand now, it may take 2 hours or more. That is a lot, and I really want to tell you about something else, something much more meaningful. No, Anastasia, tell me about flying saucers and their propulsion methods. Tell me about energy carriers until I understand that I shan't listen to anything else. Stubborn. She's right when she says that humans are stubborn, right? Or, well, she's a human, but we can be stubborn due to our programming. All right, she acquiesced and then went on. An explosion occurs when a solid substance quickly changes under a certain influence into gaseous form, and when in the course of a reaction, two gaseous substances evolve into something even lighter. Everyone, of course, understands this part. Yeah, I don't. Anyway, yes, I replied. The powder is ignited, it becomes smoke, and liquid fuel becomes gas, okay? Yes, more or less, but if you or your people had purer thoughts and consequently a knowledge of the functions of nature, you would have long ago become aware that if there is a substance capable of instant expansion and, through explosion, transformation into another state, the opposite process must also hold true. In nature, there are living microorganisms that transform gaseous substances into solids. All plants do this, in fact, only at varying speeds and with varying degrees of firmness and solidity of the resulting substance. Take a look around you and you will see that plants take in liquid from the earth and breathe air and then process these into a hard and solid body. Let us say wood, of course, right, or something else harder and more solid like a nutshell or a plumstone. A microorganism smaller than the eye can see does this with fantastic speed, feeding, it would seem, on air alone. That's true, right? It is these same kinds of microorganisms that power flying saucers. They are like the microshells in the brain, only their operation has a very narrow focus. Their sole function is propulsion, but they carry out this function to perfection, and they can accelerate a flying saucer to 1/19 of speed. Hold on, I've just lost my place. To 1/19 of speed of the average modern Earth dweller's thoughts. Wow. These microorganisms are located on the inner surface of the upper part of the flying saucer and positioned between its double walls, which are set approximately 3 centimetres apart. Here comes in the 3 again, right? The upper and lower surfaces of the outer walls are porous with micro-sized pinholes. The microorganisms draw in air through these pinholes, thereby creating a vacuum ahead of the saucer. The streams of air begin to congeal even before contact with the saucer, and as they pass through the microorganism, they are transformed into tiny spheres. Then these spheres are enlarged even more to approximately 0.5 centimetre in diameter. They lose their firmness and slide down between the walls into the lower part of the saucer, where they again decompose into a gaseous substance. You can even eat them if you can do this before they decompose. What about the walls of the flying saucer? What are they made of? They are cultivated, grown. How so? Why the surprise? Just give a little thought. You will figure it out. Many people cultivate a fungus in various kinds of containers. The fungus, by the way, imbues the water in which it is placed with a pleasant, slightly acidic flavour and takes the shape of the container. This fungus, by the way, is very similar to a flying saucer. It creates a double wall above and below. If another organism is added to its water, it produces a congealment, but this so-called microorganism can be produced, or rather given birth to, by the power of the will or the brain. Much like a vivid concept of imagery. Can you do this, I asked. Yes, but I do not have sufficient power of my own. The action of several dozen people having the same ability is required, and it takes about a year all told. And we know this, or this is stuff that's coming into many people's consciousness about the pyramids, right? About these big megalithic structures that actually there were these stones where they were levitated using sound, using vibration, using thought, that they were levitated into place, and it took more than one person to do this. It took the power of many people to work together to use that power of thought, of vibration, of sound to move these stones into place. So this like resonates here, that she's saying, yes, I could do it, but I need more than one person to do it with. And can one find on our earth anything necessary to make or grow, as you say, such a flying saucer and these microorganisms? Of course one can. The earth has everything that the universe has. But how do you get the microorganisms inside the wall of the saucer if they are so small you can't even see them? Once the upper wall is cultivated, it will attract and collect them in huge numbers, just as bees are attracted to cells, right? Because everything on the earth is created to make life harmony and bliss, and simple, not difficult, the path that we've gone down. But this process also requires the collective will of several dozens people. In any case, what is the use in elaborating further if you cannot cultivate for lack of people with the right kind of will, intelligence and knowledge? Isn't there some way you could help? I could. So do it. I have already. What have you done? I was still perplexed. I told you how children should be raised, and I shall tell you more. You will tell this to others. Many will understand, and their children raised in this manner will have the intelligence, the knowledge and the will which permits them to make not only a primitive flying saucer, but significantly more, right? There's going to be so many inventions in the coming golden age that we are stepping into that is going to really help humanity. It's not going to be the inventions that are being created now to just help a few and harm the rest and harm the planet. It's going to be completely different, and it is going to be the minds of our children that are coming into a world where we're expanding consciousness, where they're not going through the same level of programming that we have been through. We're going to be creating a whole new different world. Anastasia, how do you know so much about a flying saucer? Don't tell me that too comes through your communication with the plants. They've been landing here, and I have helped them repair their ship. Are they much smarter than us? Not at all. They have a long way to go to attain the level of man. They are afraid of us, afraid to approach people, even though they are very curious. At first they were afraid of me. They trained their mental paralysis on me, put on quite a show. They tried to frighten me, shock me. It was quite a challenge to calm them down and convince them I would only treat them with affection. Well, how can they be less smart than us if they can do things man can't do yet? What is so surprising about that? Bees too make incredible structures out of natural materials, including whole ventilations and heating systems. But that does not mean they are superior to man in intelligence. In the universe, there is no one and nothing stronger than man except God, right? Because God created the human form as a God form, with everything that God has, gave everything to man, so that the spirit, because our spirits are connected to God, right, our higher self, so that it could play in these playgrounds. Again, it's just that we've been playing in an inverted matrix for some time. So the brain, a super computer. The possibility of building a flying saucer greatly interested me. If one examines the principle of propulsion just as a hypothesis, it is still a new one. A flying saucer, however, is a complex machine and is not a high priority item for us earthlings. For the reason I wanted to hear something that would be understandable right away, I wanted something that did not require any investigation of scholarly minds, but could be immediately put into practice in our daily lives and benefit everyone. I began asking Anastasia to come up with a solution to a question that our society is being confronted with today. She agreed but asked, could you at least put it in more specific terms, this question? How can I solve something when I do not know what you have in mind? I began thinking, what was the number one problem we face today? And the following terms came to mind. You know, Anastasia, our major cities right now are confronted with the most acute problem, environmental pollution. Right, pollution. And there's a difference between pollution and climate change. And really, again, the agenda has been confusing people with climate change, whereas the real problem we've got, the climate always changes, that is natural. You can go back into any history and see that the real problem that we face is pollution, rather than climate change. So pollution. But you yourselves are the one polluting it. So I do get that, right? But I also, again, this to me, it shows the lack of experience in this world, knowing that yes, we are ourselves polluting it, but many of that has been, again, through programming, through technologies withheld from us, through so many things. You know, human beings at the core of goodness, they don't want to pollute the home that they live in. And there's been a lot of agendas out there to really, you know, in my town that I live in, we go through this rigmarole of recycling, and they give us 5 different bins to split up. And I know this stuff is not recycled; it's shipped off to India. It's all smoke and mirrors that they create out there, but they try and make life difficult for the normal person because they want the normal person in suffering and in exhaustion, so they can't connect to who they are, so they can't really realise what is going on. It is purposeful that the world is being polluted by these forces, but again, that is going to change. So I feel like that sentence is a little bit uncompassionate, but anyway, we realise that. Please hear me out. Only don't go philosophising about how we must be pure ourselves, have more trees around and so forth. Just take things as they are today and think up something. For example, how to reduce the pollution in our major cities by 50% without costing the treasury, the government, that is, any extra money, and make it so that your plan will be the most logical of all possible alternatives, and that it will be capable of instant implementation so that I and everyone else can not fail to understand it. I shall try it once, Anastasia replied. Have you specified all the terms? I thought I should try and make it even more complex, just in case her mind and abilities really turned out to be truly superior to what our own powers of reasoning allowed. So I added, and make whatever you think up to be profit generating. For whom? For me and for the country too. You live within the borders of Russia, so make it the whole of Russia. Are we talking about money? Yes, an enormous amount of money. Profit, Anastasia? Well, money is never an enormous amount, but I need enough money to be able to pay for this expedition and have enough left over for a new one. And as for Russia, I thought for a moment, what if I managed to get Anastasia just a little interested in the material benefits of our civilization, and then asked, you wouldn't want anything for yourself? I have everything, she replied. But all at once an idea came to me, something that might possibly interest her. How about this, Anastasia? Let's have your plan make enough money to provide free seeds, or at least seeds at a discount, to all your beloved dachniks or gardeners throughout Russia. Terrific, fantastic, Anastasia exclaimed. What a wonderful idea. If you have finished, I shall now get to work. How delightful that sounds. Seeds. Oh, is there anything else you wish to add? No, Anastasia, that's enough for now. I felt her inspiration and excitement, not only over the task itself, but especially over the free seeds for her dachniks. Yet at that point, I still felt convinced that even with her special abilities, a solution to the problem of air pollution was simply out of the question, else our many scientific institutions would have come up with it a long time ago. Obviously, we know that's not true because they're programmed not to do that, right? With a bustle of energy, because the education system is completely owned by the dark controllers, with a bustle of energy this time, not her usual calm and quiet self, Anastasia lay down on the grass, her arms widespread, her curled fingers reached their cushioned tips upward, alternating between motion and stillness, while her eyelids trembled on her closed eyes. She lay there for about 20 minutes, then opened her eyes, sat up and said, I have come up with it, but what a nightmare it is. What have you come up with, and what's this about a nightmare? The greatest harm is coming from your so-called automobiles. There are so many of them in the large cities, and every one of them is emitting both an unpleasant odour and substances harmful to human bodies. The most frightening thing is that these substances are mixing with earth or dust particles and impregnating them. The movement of the automobiles picks up the impregnated dust, and people are breathing in this horrible mess. It gets swept into the air and then settles on the grass and the trees, covering everything around. This is very bad. It's very harmful to the health of both people and plants. Of course it's bad. Everyone knows it's bad, only nobody can do anything about it. We have street cleaning machines, but they can't keep up. You, Anastasia, have discovered absolutely nothing new. You haven't thought of any original solution to purifying our air. All I did just now was to determine the basic source of the danger. Now I shall think about it further and analyse it. I need to concentrate for a long time, perhaps as long as an hour, since I've never dealt with a problem like this before, so that you will not be bored. Interesting, right? She needs an hour, and we've spent how many decades, how much money, time, energy to come up with cars that pollute the earth and human bodies, right? Interesting. So that you will not be bothered, do go for a walk in the forest, or you can get on with your own thinking, I'll find something to do. And Anastasia withdrew into herself. Coming back an hour later after a walk in the forest, I found her, as it appeared to me, in a state of some discontent, and I said, you see, Anastasia, you and your brain of yours aren't capable of doing anything either. Only don't worry about it. You've got a lot of scientific institutions working on this question, but they, just like you, can only describe the fact that pollution is going on. They haven't been able to do anything about it yet. She answered in a somewhat apologetic tone. I have gone over in my mind, I believe, all the possible variants, but I do not see any way of quickly reducing the pollution by 50%. My mind was at once set on the alert. She had found some sort of solution after all. So what kind of reduction did you come up with? I asked. She sighed. Not that much. I managed to achieve 35 to 40%. Now that's amazing, right? What? I couldn't help exclaiming. Pretty poor results there, said Anastasia. A lump formed in my throat. I realised she was incapable of lying, exaggerating, or downplaying anything she said. Trying to restrain my excitement, I said, let's change the terms of the project. Let's say 38%. Quick, tell me what you've come up with. Your automobiles must be equipped to not only scatter this foul dust, but to collect it as well. How can you do that? Talk faster. Those things sticking out in front of the automobile, what are they called? Bumpers, I offered. Alright, bumpers, inside them or below them should be attached a little box with small holes facing frontwards. There should also be holes in its backside so that air can escape. While the automobiles are in motion, air laden with this harmful dust will be drawn in through the front holes, purified, and then escape through the back holes. Amazing, right? So it's acting as its own filter system. So whilst it's coming out, it's being taken straight back in and filtered and purified. So when it goes out, at least 40% of it is purified. And that air will already be 20% less polluted. And what about the remaining 20%? Right now, virtually none of the dust is removed, but with this method, there will be a lot less in the air since it will be collected all over the place every day. I have calculated that in 1 month, with the help of all these little boxes, if they are fitted to all automobiles, the amount of polluting dust will decrease by 40%. Beyond that, there will be no reduction since other factors are at work. So it's taken her an hour to come up with this. So one would think that, you know, this industry, this government, the things that are behind it do not want the air to be polluted, right? And that would be the truth. Beyond that, there will be no reduction since other factors are at work. What size of boxes and what should they contain? How many holes and at what distance from each other? Vladimir, perhaps you would like me to personally attach them to every single automobile. I like it, she's using some sarcasm there. For the first time I perceived that Anastasia had a sense of humour, and I began to laugh at the thought of her attaching her little boxes to all our cars. She laughed too, delighted in my cheerful mood, and began whirling her way across the glade. The principle was really very simple. The rest was merely a question of logistics. Already, without Anastasia's help, I was beginning to imagine how it could all be orders from administrative heads, motor vehicle inspection and control, turning in old filters for new ones in filling stations, a system of vouchers and so forth, a routine regulation just like seatbelts. All it had taken back then was one stroke of the pen, and presto, seatbelts in every family car. And here too, one stroke of the pen, and again, presto, cleaner air. I mean, obviously we're not seeing that this is happening right now, are we? And I do think there's going to be other marvellous, even more advanced technologies that are going to come through in the golden age as people start to wake up. And obviously I think with this as well, a lot of these inventions get squashed, right? Anything that people try and bring forward that is going to improve humanity, pollution, a lot of it gets squashed from a governmental perspective, from a regulation perspective. But that is going to change. And there would be tough competition among entrepreneurs for orders to supply the boxes, a good deal of work for the manufacturing plants, and the main thing, of course, cleaner air. Wait, I said, turning once more to Anastasia, who was still swirling around in a boisterous dance. What should be put into these boxes, into those boxes, into those boxes? You will come up with a little something. It's very simple, she replied without stopping. And where is my money going to come from? And to supply seeds for the Dakniks came another question. She stopped. What do you mean from where? You wanted my idea to be the most rational of all, and that is exactly why I've come up with the most rational solution there can be. It will spread to large cities throughout the world, and for this idea they will pay Russia enough to supply the free seeds, and enough to pay you, only you will receive your payment under certain conditions. I didn't pay attention immediately to her remark about the certain conditions, but began focusing in on something else. So we should patent it. Obviously, who would pay of their own free will? Why would they not pay? They will pay, and I can even see the rates right now from the production of those boxes. Russia will get 2% and you will get 1/100%. What's the good of use of your setting a rate? You do have a few strong points, but when it comes to business, you're still a complete ignoramus. Nobody will pay voluntary, even when they are signed agreements, they don't always pay. If only you knew how many there are in our world that don't. Our courts are overloaded. By the way, do you know what the arbitration court is? I can guess, but in this case, they will pay faithfully. Anyone who does not pay will go bankrupt. I love that, right? And again, this is the new earth energies that are coming in, where integrity is going to be absolutely crucial, because if you're not in integrity, the energy is going to be moving against you, and the energies are going to, so like she's saying there, I can totally see that being a part of the new earth energies, that any businesses, any person that takes something that is there to help humanity, to help the planet, and tries to turn it into something that is just beneficial for themselves, they'll end up going bankrupt. They'll end up those businesses are going to start to collapse more and more, and I really do see that happening because of the energies that are coming in. It's literally like when a vibration, when a frequency changes, anything that is outside of that frequency, well, it cannot exist, right? It either has to up level or it's going to be taken away. It's just simply how energy works. So I could see that. What will make them go bankrupt? Don't tell me you're in the racket business. What are you imagining now? What give you that idea? They themselves, or rather circumstances themselves, will overtake any cheaters and make them go bankrupt. And then the thought dawned on me, given that Anastasia is incapable of lying, and as she herself said, the systems inherent in nature do not allow her to make a mistake. It means that before stating any conclusion, she must have processed in her brain an enormous amount of information, made zillions of mathematical calculations, and taken into account a whole mass of psychological characteristics of the people who will be participating in her project. In our terms, she not only solved the most difficult question of purifying the air, but also drew up and analysed a business plan, and all that in roughly an hour and a half. I thought I had still better clarify certain details, and so I asked her, tell me, Anastasia, you made some sort of calculations in your head, figuring out the percentage of pollution reduction and the amount of money to be realised from the sale of your car accessory box, filter replacements and so forth. Calculations were made in the greatest detail and not just with the help of the brain. Stop, quiet. Let me tell you what I think. Does this mean you could compute with our top of the line computers, let's say Japanese or American computers? But I do not find that very interesting, she replied, adding, it is primitive and somewhat degrading. Competing with a computer, right? Your brain is so much more a superior computer. It's just that we've got to look, we're just relearning how to access and switch on. When our brains are fully online, boy, we're going to laugh at the technology that we have been using. We are going to laugh. Competing with a computer, that is tantamount to, oh, how can I find you a good analogue? This is tantamount to hands or feet competing with a fake, I can't pronounce that word today for some reason, and not even with a full one, just part of one. With the computer, the most vital element is missing, and the most vital element is feelings, consciousness. I started to argue the opposite, telling how in our world there are people considered very intelligent, respected in society, that play chess with computers, but when this and other arguments still failed to convince her, I started asking her to agree to do this for me and other people as a proof of the possibilities of the human brain. She finally agreed, and then I made an invitation more specific. So I can officially announce your willingness to take part in a problem-solving contest with a Japanese supercomputer. Why a Japanese, Anastasia questioned. Because they are considered to be the best in the world. Well now, it will be better if I do it with all of them at once. So you will not have to ask me again to do such a boring thing. Great, I exclaimed enthusiastically. Let's do it with all of them. Only you'll have to think up a problem. All right, Anastasia reluctantly agreed. But for a start, so as not to waste time on thinking of one, let them try solving the problem you put to me earlier, right? How amazing, right? Yeah, so she's already solved a massive problem with the pollution. So she's saying, okay, well, these computers are so smart and they're smarter than humans, give it that problem and let's let it solve it. And we know it's not going to do, right? Well, at least that's what I believe. We'll see. Well, it's not. Well, but for a start, I was thinking it would have done already, but although I actually believe probably things have been, obviously you go back to Nikola Tesla and people like that who invented free energy and then were just really hounded and lots of bad things happened to them to keep them down, right? But for a start, so let's not waste time. Let's use a problem from earlier to see whether they confirm or refute my hypotheses. If they refute it, let them put forth their own. Let us be the judge of life. Let us be judged by life and by other people. Great, Anastasia, good for you. That is most constructive. And how much time do you think should be allowed for them to come up with a solution? I think the hour and a half you took will not be enough for them. Let's give them 3 months. 3 months it shall be. And I suggest the judging be left to anybody who wants to take part. If there's a lot of judges, then no one can influence the outcome of their own ulterior motives. So be it. But I would still like to talk with you about raising children. Anastasia considered the raising of children paramount and would always delight in talking about it. She wasn't particularly excited about my idea of competing with computers. However, I was very happy to have secured her cooperation. Now I want to invite all firms producing state-of-the-art computers to join a competition to solve the above stated problem. I still felt I had to clarify a point or two with Anastasia, and what prize should be offered to the winner, I asked. I do not need anything, she replied. Why do you just think of yourself? Are you so absolutely certain you're going to win? Of course, I am man after all. Well, okay, I love that. What can you offer the firm who takes first place after you? Well, I could give them some advice on how to perfect their primitive computer. Then it's settled. Right, I'm going to leave it there before we move into the next chapter. And hopefully you enjoyed that, and I will see you on the next one.